What would happen if the United States and Canada were a single nation? What impact would this union have on politics, economics, culture, and international relations? Would this alliance be an invincible superpower or a source of internal conflict? In this video, we explore the possible consequences of this hypothetical scenario, based on the history, geography, and demographics of both countries. This time we will explore an alternative history where the United States and Canada merge. Ready to travel to a parallel dimension? Here we go! The current state of Canada. In previous videos we talked in detail about the current state of the USA, and although we will review it when the time comes, to understand this alternative history we must know how Canada is currently. In this map we can see Canada as one of the best countries in America to live in, only equaled by the United States, and these graphs prove it. And because these two neighboring countries are two allies and collaborators who trust each other so much, it should surprise no one that they offer equally good lifestyles. Canadians enjoy a high standard of living, with access to good education, healthcare, housing, and social security. The country also has a low crime rate, a strong democracy, and a pristine natural environment. Come on, you have to admit that maybe they do live as well or better than the Americans. The country is a major producer of natural resources such as oil, natural gas, minerals, and timber. They also love free trade and capitalism as much as their neighbors. On top of that, they have a significant manufacturing and service industry. Notably, there are far fewer red areas than in the US, and Canadian society is often seen as a friendlier one, although obviously, they have their exceptions. And finally, let's dig into Canada's interests. These are very similar to those of the United States. The only difference is that, well, they only care about their own country and have shown genuine interest in helping others without forcing their ideals. But they only care about growing, being humanistic, and maintaining the security of their country. Only without fine print in the contract. And on the other side of this story, we have United States. As I mentioned earlier, we already talked about the Cradle of America in detail in past episodes, which you can watch on the channel. But we couldn't explore this new reality without at least knowing the basics, so let's make a quick summary. Not everything is perfect in America. Besides offering a great quality of life and being a world power, it is also a rather unequal country. Medical care is a bit of a trap, and its society leaves something to be desired in some aspects and areas. Many states are considerably violent. Its main interests are three. It seeks to maintain its national security and protect its interests, but yes, its methods are not the best. It also seeks to promote its economic prosperity and ensure access to natural resources. And finally, to ensure its democratic and humanist values throughout the world, but again, with somewhat questionable methods. Good! With all this information clarified, it is time to start diving into the possibility of the new country. By the way, what name would it have in your opinion? Well, let's clarify the following. For what reasons and what would it take for the USA and Canada to merge? Guys, a merger like this would not work like a Dragon Ball merger. A lot of requirements need to be met for something like this to take place, not to mention having very good reasons to do something like this. Because again, a process like this in today's world is no small thing. But of course, many problems would have to be overcome to do something like the following. The United States and Canada have different cultures, values, and traditions. The process could lead to cultural conflicts and loss of Canadian identity. Not to mention, the merger would require significant political reform in both territories. The two countries have different political systems, and unification could lead to a loss of democracy. In the final and therefore most violent challenge, the decision could be unpopular with the population in both places, meaning that a civil war could erupt between Canadian and US citizens. Now, assuming all of these challenges are overcome, and hopefully non-violently, 3 concrete things would be needed to make this marriage official. Number 1, a political agreement. The 2 countries would have to agree on the terms of the merger, including the new political structure, economy, and culture. Second, a constitutional reform. The USA and Canada would have to reform their constitutions to reflect the new relationship. Last but not least, a public referendum. Citizens of both countries would have to vote on the decision to merge. With all these requirements fulfilled, this is what the new world will look like. The United States of Canada, a new country, is born, but what can we expect? A world where the United States and Canada merge as a single country would be a very different world than it is today. If anything has become clear, it is that the merger would create a larger and stronger economy, greater security, and greater global influence. The 2 countries already have a close trading relationship, and unification could lead to greater economic cooperation and the creation of new jobs. The new nation would have a combined GDP of more than $27 trillion, making it the largest economy in the world. This would allow the super country to invest in infrastructure, education, and healthcare, which would improve the quality of life for its citizens considerably. Add to that the new cradle of America would have a much shorter land border, which would facilitate surveillance and control, so ultimately we would have a much stronger nation. How strong? Well, as mentioned earlier, the 2 countries are already members of NATO and the UN, and this process could strengthen their influence in the world. The United States of Canada would have a population of over 350 million people, making it the 3rd most populous nation in the world. This would give the country a greater influence in the United Nations and other international organizations. Well, no, let's not get too excited, because it would also cause some problems that we have to consider. For example, how would America's enemies react to this merger? And I mention the USA specifically because, well, Canada in principle has no enemies. What do you think Russia or China would do under the pressure of their biggest rival having doubled their power? Would they join with each other? Would they try to join with their neighbors? Or would they even do it by force? I mean, Russia would probably have to make a more radical decision on Ukraine sooner rather than later, and the conflict we are currently experiencing could become even more violent. Also, on the other hand, what if power goes to this new superpower's head and it decides to take on other countries? These are possibilities that must always be taken into account, especially if we consider nuclear weapons, although it is likely that Canadian policies, being more peaceful, could make this new country not have so many intentions to remain at enmity with other territories. What do you think about this? And this is just the tip of the iceberg, as there is much more to consider, i.e., both Canada and the USA are considered some of the best countries in the world. If they get together, who would get the capital, Ottawa or Washington? Which laws would be predominant, the US or Canadian Constitution? Besides the Civil War we mentioned earlier, yeah, well, it makes for its video. But we've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's discuss some hypothetical cases that could have led to this world and what it would be like. Suppose the United States and Canada come together soon, after an economic and social crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change. The 2 countries decided to form a political and economic union called the United States of America and Canada, to strengthen their position in the world and address global challenges. The capital of the new union remains in Washington, D.C., but a new legislative body called the Parliament of EUAC, United States of America Canada, is created, based in Ottawa, where representatives of the 60 states meet. On the other hand, a new president is elected from zero and tries to be impartial by not putting the candidacy of any of the current presidents of both countries. It is still elected every 4 years. Any politician, regardless of citizenship, is eligible. It would be the fairest decision, wouldn't it? The union process would generate diverse reactions among the citizens of both countries. Some see it as an opportunity for integration and cooperation, while others see it as a threat to their identity and sovereignty. Canadian citizens living in cities or provinces farther away from the U.S., such as Quebec, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Labrador, are particularly unhappy with the annexation and are demanding more autonomy or even independence. There are also tensions between speakers of English and French, which are the official languages of EUAC, and speakers of other languages, such as Spanish or Chinese, which are a minority but numerous in some regions such as Texas with so many Spanish speakers. In the political arena, there are significant changes in the party and candidate landscape. The main parties vying for power are the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, and the Green Party. Each of them has to adapt to the new realities and demands of the voters and seek alliances or coalitions with other parties. Candidates who benefit are those who have a more inclusive and progressive vision of EUAC, and who can attract the support of different social and cultural groups. Disadvantaged candidates are those who have a more exclusionary and conservative vision of EUAC, and who oppose change or dialogue. Finally, in the area of laws, there are important modifications in areas such as health, education, security, environment, human rights, immigration, and defense. The aim is to establish a universal and free health system, public and quality education, citizen and border security, protection of the environment and biodiversity, a guarantee of human and civil rights, a fair but at the same time supportive immigration policy, and a common and peaceful defense. These reforms face resistance from some sectors that prefer to maintain the status quo or defend their particular interests.